Hey, this is Scott Peterson, and today I was going to just kind of give a quick look at one part of one of my presets, show you how I do it, and hopefully it'll give you something to try and see if it works for you. So this is my basic template that I use, which I know looks confusing, but it really isn't, believe it or not, for me. Everything's just coming through right now. What we're hearing is amp, which is Friedman HPE. A cab, which is, I don't use anything in this block except for the cab. It's an IR that I mixed. It's from the Ownhammer Checkerboard Marshall 412. It's two speakers mixed together, various SM57, Royer 121 mixed to where I think it sounds pretty good. I set the proximity frequency for the Ownhammer collections, the current one, well, the ones as of the time I'm recording this, at 125. Just sounds best to me. That's why. When we look at the Reverb Block, which is what I want to look at, I'm going to just set it to default. I'm going to use the effect type Studio, which I happen to like very much. You're going to watch as I turn the reverb all the way up, which I never do. When you look at how much reverb I usually use, which is where this is at, it's turned up about 1/4. Now I have this attached to an external controller, and I adjust this with my foot on the fly. Most times, most gigs, this is kind of a set it, forget it setting for me. I walk in, judge how much reverb I need or don't need in that room, set it, and forget it. The way that I approach reverb is it kind of gives you a reference in relation to how spatially in space where the guitar is. It's not so much just to add a room to it as to place it in space to you. And we'll hear it dry, and then we'll hear it with a lot of reverb. So if you watch that knob turn as I turned it with my expression pedal, I turned it now up to 100% reverb. So what we're having is, I'll move this so you can kind of visualize it better. I have basically everything coming into the delay. That's routed serially. Out of that I go into reverb, and that goes to the output, and I also come directly out of that delay into the output. So what that allows me to do is keep my dry signal all the way through and just add some reverb to it. When you mix in parallel, there are three things in this block you have to pay attention to. The first is you can't have this bypass mode in through. That's for serial routing only. Any of the others work fine. I happen to mute the FXN so that if you did shut it off and wanted the tails to finish, they would. The mix is at 100%. The effect is all the way up. All it is adding an effects box. There is no mix. The level of mix is more how much reverb you want to add. These two controls here control that for me. This would be the absolute ceiling I would ever want to use or need to use. I don't usually ever do this, but it works from the way that I operate. The input gain is what I showed you, and that's how I attach the controller to it, and that works. So this is without reverb, what it sounds like. So it's a good tone. It's a tone I like. It's kind of a heavier, modern rocky kind of thing that I use a lot. And what I do, though, is I like some reverb on it. Now, I don't add as much reverb as you're going to hear, and this isn't tweaked out yet, and I'm going to show you what I do and tell you why in one sec. But let's hear it. With the default stock settings turned all the way up so you can really hear the reverb and get a feel for what it's doing. That's a lot of reverb. So the way that I do this is I approach this block, and I only really do three things. Once I figure the type of reverb I want to work with, I adjust these two settings here, which in essence are a more sophisticated version of what is offered in the room section over here in the cab block. I like to do it here. So one of the things that I like to do and that I have played with that I prefer, you can adjust it the way you like, but I turn this way down. I want to hear the early reflections first. The early reflections are, in addition to the direct signal that you hear straight from the speaker, the reflections you hear off the boundaries, like the floor and any walls around you or any objects around you. The way that I like to think, you're going to hear those first before you hear the reverb slapping off the back of a wall or faraway walls. So that's the way that I approach this. The quickie way that I do this is I set this to -3, not 3. And then I set this to -12. It's just where I ended up. And it was all through trial and error. And all these settings are a lot less scientific and a lot more just trial and error. That's how I do things. Now that's a good reverb. I like the way it feels, but I don't like the way it sounds. So what I do is then I come into the block with EQ, and I EQ the actual reverb. So all this is EQing is that reverb block. And because I have it routed the way I do, you're hearing enough of your direct signal. It's not going to really have anything to do with how your guitar sounds, but it does have a big difference in the way the reverb sounds. These are the settings that I normally start at. I use these, so I'm just going to shortcut it. I just do a low cut at 100 and a high cut at 8,000. It just works for me. Now this is with the reverb all the way up, and then I'll do it dry. You can watch up here and see as I go and listen, and then I'll do it with it fully wet like this. I'll do it dry, and then I'll dial it down to where I normally do it and give you a quick listen to that. And that's my shortcut on how I set the reverb block up and why I do it. So try it out, see if it works for you, and let me know what you think.